Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Laura Cohen, and I'm the Executive Director of the Harriet and Kenneth Kupferberg Holocaust Center here at Queensborough Community College at the City University of New York in Bayside, Queens. Our mission is to use the lessons of the Holocaust to educate current and future generations about the ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping. Today's special event is entitled Poetry of Witness and Resistance, a conversation with the poet Ilya Kaminsky, whose poems bear witness to our times and create a space for empathy and compassion in resistance to oppression. The Kupferberg Holocaust Center in Bayside, New York is situated on the traditional land of the Mantinecock people who continue to live here today. We offer gratitude and respect to all of the indigenous people of Turtle Island, past, present, and future, including the Lenape and Shinnecock peoples. We're going to welcome everybody to come in. Before I continue, to everyone grab a seat. We're really excited. This event is happening simultaneously online and in person. And so for our online audience, we have a number of students that are coming in right now. So we're just going to take a moment so everyone has the opportunity to get seated. All right, so come on in. All right, so I'm going to do the land acknowledgement one more time. The Kupferberg Holocaust Center in Bayside, New York is situated on the traditional land of the Mantinecock people who continue to live here today. We offer gratitude and respect to all of the indigenous people of Turtle Island, past, present, and future, including the Lenape and Shinnecock peoples. What I just read is what we call a land acknowledgement. This is a statement recognizing that the land we all occupy in the course of our daily lives, including our schools, jobs, parks, and homes, as well as the names of towns and roads, was first inhabited by another group of people who were forcibly expelled and murdered. Today, we identify those crimes for what they are: mass atrocities and genocide. These horrors continue to have devastating political, social, psychological, economic, and environmental impacts upon and within Native American and Indigenous communities. This event is part of the 2025-26 Harriet and Kenneth Kupferberg Holocaust Center and National Endowment for the Humanities Colloquium entitled Resistance, Resilience, and Reinvention: Artists and Academics Escaping Nazism, and is co-sponsored by 7 organizations across the country. They include the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center in White Plains, the Center for Genocide and Human Rights Research in Africa and the Diaspora at Northeastern Illinois University, the Center for the Study of Genocide and Human Rights at Rutgers University, the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center at Manhattan University, the Ray Walpole Institute for the Study of the Holocaust, Genocide, and Crimes Against Humanity at Western Washington University, the Reef Center for Human Rights and Conflict Resolution at Christopher Newport University, and the Cohen Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Keene State College. I'd like to thank our colleagues from the Media Services and Digital Transformation Departments, including Phil Roncaroni, Jesse Pina, and Mahir Hossein, as well as Barana Soman, the KHC's Museum Coordinator. Before we begin, for everyone here in person, we could just take a moment to silence our cell phones or turn them off. And after the presentation, we'll also be hosting a Q&A. So for those of you online, please be sure to drop your question in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. For everyone here, you have 2 options, and we'll invite you either up so you can ask your question of Ilya directly, or you can stay in your seat and we'll pass a microphone to you. So we'll talk about all of that when we get to the Q&A. And now it's my pleasure to introduce one of this year's KHC NEH Faculty Fellows, Professor Allison Cimino. Professor Cimino teaches composition and creative writing at Queensborough Community College and is a full-time lecturer in English. For many years, she facilitated poetry workshops for educators through Lesley University's education program in the Division of Creative Arts and Learning, where she taught a graduate class on arts, integrated learning, and poetry. Her poems have appeared in Hunger Mountain Review, 30 Days, The Best of the 3030 Project, Ibbotson Street, Oberon Magazine, and other journals. Her essays, Arts Integrated Learning Through Poetry, Implementing Awareness, Metaphor, and Play Across Curriculum, was published in Poetry Across the Curriculum, New Methods of Writing-Intensive Pedagogy for U.S. Community College and Undergraduate Education. And prior to the pandemic, she volunteered for the College Justice Program, CJP, teaching English, teaching poetry at Edgecombe Correctional Facility, and as a member of CJP, she helped to secure and organize Thrive, which is a series of workshop trainings funded by John Jay Institute for Justice and Opportunity to help create systemic change to better serve justice-impacted students. She also holds an MFA from Texas State University. Finally, she has presented at conferences on arts-integrated learning and contemplative education. Professor Cimino, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Laura, and to the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. Queensborough Community College and Ilya Kaminsky for being here today. Welcome to everyone who's joining us on Zoom, and a special thank you to the students and faculty joining us here live at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. I appreciate you all being here. It's an honor to be with you all today as part of the NEH Colloquium Series, Resistance, Resilience, and Reinvention, Artists and Academics Escaping Nazism. Dr. Beth Cunahan, Professor of English, and Dr. Mark Zelker, Assistant Professor of Philosophy, are the two additional fellows who join me in organizing this year's colloquium. In 1933, as Hitler consolidated power, thousands of Jewish and dissident artists and academics fled persecution, not only from Nazi anti-Semitism, but also from the regime's totalitarian control over culture and society. As Nazism spread, many painters, writers, filmmakers, and scholars sought refuge in Europe and the United States, though restrictive and anti-Semitic immigration policies often blocked their escape. This series explores the history, contributions, and lasting impact of those who escaped. Additionally, the series highlights the resistance and creative works that emerged from their survival. Please join me in a moment of silence in remembrance of those who did not escape the Nazi religious, intellectual, and artistic persecution, and those impacted by the Holocaust. Thank you. It is a joy and honor to introduce Ilya Kaminsky. In his essay Of Strangeness That Wakes Us on the poetry of Celan, a poet who endured the Holocaust, Kaminsky quotes Polish poet Herbert in answering the question, what is the purpose of poetry? Who answers, to wake up. In our own times, the great achievement of Deaf Republic and Kaminsky's poems is that this is poetry that indeed wakes us, makes us look inward, and cautions us to remember our humanity. Ilya Kaminsky was born in Odessa, former Soviet Union, in 1977 and arrived to the US in 1993 when his family was granted asylum by the government. He is the author of Deaf Republic, Graywolf Press, and Dancing in Odessa, Tupelo Press, and co-editor and co-translator of many other books. His honors are many, but to name a few. His work was the finalist for the National Book Award and won the Los Angeles Times Book Award, the Anisfield-Wolf Book Award, the National Jewish Book Award. He is the recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship and a Lannan Fellowship and an Academy of American Poets Fellowship and an NEA Fellowship. He currently teaches at Princeton and lives in New Jersey. Please welcome Ilya Kaminsky.
Thank you so much again for this very, very kind introduction. I'm grateful. And thank you all for being here. I'm very grateful for the chance to share poems, and I hope this won't be just reading of poems or just me talking at you, but will be more of a conversation between us. So please, at any point, if you have any questions or would like to chat about something, just put that in the Q&A. Having said that, you probably noticed it by now that I speak with a pretty heavy accent. So I'm going to share the handout of poems I'll read from with you in hopes that everybody is able to follow the work. What I will read from first is a collection called Deaf Republic. It's my second book of poems, and it is a fairy tale, a story, a fable in verse that begins with a pregnant woman and her husband who, at a public gathering, see a soldier shoot and kill a young deaf boy. And in response to that murder, they see the whole community decide to stand up to authorities and protest by refusing to hear them. So this is Deaf Republic. The first poem is called We Lived Happily During the War. We lived happily during the war, and when they bombed other people's houses, we protested, but not enough. We opposed them, but not enough. I was in my bed, and on my bed America was falling. Invisible house by invisible house by invisible house. I took a chair outside and watched the sun. In 6 months of a disastrous reign, in a house of money, in a street of money, in a city of money, in a country of money, our great country of money. Forgive us. Live it happily during the war. The Deaf Republic. The first piece is called Gunshot. Our country is a stage. When soldiers march into town, public assemblies are officially prohibited. But today, neighbors flock to the piano music from Sonia and Alphonse's puppet show in Central Square. Some of us have climbed up into trees. Others hide behind benches and telegraph posts. When Petya, the deaf boy in the front row, sneezes, the sergeant puppet collapses shrieking. He stands up again, snort, shake his fist at the laughing audience. An army jeep swerves into the square, disgorging itself, and the sergeant disperses immediately. Disperse immediately. The puppet mimics in a wooden falsetto. Everyone freezes except Petya, who keeps giggling. Someone claps a hand over his mouth. The sergeant turns towards the boy, raising his finger. You! The puppet raises a finger. Sonia watches her puppet. The puppet watches the sergeant. The sergeant watches Sonia and Alphonse. But the rest of us watch Petya lean back, gather all the spit in his throat, and launch it at the sergeant. The sound we do not hear lifts the gulls of the water. As soldiers march, Alphonse covers the boy's face with a newspaper. Watching people, most of us strangers, watch Sonia kneel by Petya shot in the middle of the street. She picks up his spectacles shining like two coins, balances them on his nose, observes this moment. How it convulses. Snow falls and the dogs run into the streets like maniacs. Both of us watch. Sonia kisses his forehead. Her shot a hole torn in the sky. It shimmers. The park benches, porch lights we see in Sonia's open mouth. The nakedness of the whole nation. She stretches out beside the little snowman napping in the middle of the street, as picking up its belly. The country runs. Alphonse in snow. You're alive. I whispered to myself, there for something in you listens. Something ran down the street, falls, fails, took a tap, I ran, etc. With my legs and my hands behind my pregnant wife, etc. Down Wasn't Street I ran, etc. It only takes a few minutes, etc. to make a man. Toughness and insufficiency begins. Our country woke up next morning and refused to hear soldiers. In the name of pity, we refuse. At 6 a.m., when soldiers compliment the girls in the alleyways, the girls slide by pointing at their ears. At 8, the bakery door is shut and soldiers see one face, oh, he's the best customer. At 10, Mama Gala chokes, no one hears you. At the gates of the soldiers' barracks. By 11 a.m., arrests begin. Our hearing does not weaken, but something silent in us strengthens. After curfew, families of the arrested come home with puppets out of their windows. The streets empty, but for the squeaks of drinks and the tap-tap against buildings, of wooden fists and feet. In the ears of the town, snow falls. Alfonso stands, answerable. My people, you were really something fucking fun. On the morning of the first arrest, our men, once frightened and bound to the bed, now stand up like human mass. Daphnis passes through them like a police whistle. Here the night testify, each of us comes home, shuts at a wall, at a stove, at a refrigerator, at himself. Forgive me. I was honest with you. Life to you I stand, answerable. I ran, etc. With my legs in my hands, etc. I ran down Washington Street, etc. Whoever listened, thank you for the feather on my tongue. Thank you for our argument that ends. Thank you for deafness, Lord. Such fire from a match you never lit. A map of bone, an opened valves. I watched the sergeant aim, the deaf boy take iron and fire in his mind, his face on the asphalt, that map of bone, an opened valves. It is the air, something in the air wants us too much. The earth is still, the tiger guards eat cucumber sandwiches. This first day, soldiers examine the years of pretenders' account, and soldiers, if we can in silence, dust to soldiers that their chorus wife from home bad like a door of a pass. Observe this moment, how it convulses the body of the boy, lies on the asphalt like a paperclip. The body of the boy lies on the asphalt like the body of a boy. I touch the walls, feel the pulse of the house, and I stare off wordless and do not know why I am alive. We tiptoe the city, Sonia and I, between theaters and guardians and wrought iron gates. Be courageous, we say, but no one is courageous, as a sound we do not hear lifts the birds off the water. Before the war, we made a child. I kissed a woman whose freckles arose the neighbors. She had a mole on her shoulder, which she displayed like a medal for bravery. Her trembling lips man come to bed. Her hair waterfalling in the middle of the conversation man come to bed. I walked in my barber shop of thoughts. Yes, I leave her off to bed on the chair of my hairy arms, but parted lips man bite my parted lips, lying under the cool sheets. Sonia, the things we did, so the same at us, so the same at us. They fire at the cloud of foam fleets inside the nostrils of searchlights. My God, have a photograph of this. In the piazza's bright air, soldiers drag Peter's body and his head bang the stairs. I feel through my wife's shirt the shape of our child. Soldiers drag Peter up the stairs on homeless decks. Then, as philosophers, understand everything and bark and bark. I now on a bridge with no camouflage of speech, a body wrapped in the body of my pregnant wife tonight. We don't die and don't die. The earth is still. A helicopter I above my wife on earth. A man cannot flip a finger at the sky because each man is already a finger flipped at the sky. Lullaby. Little daughter, rainwater, snow and branches protect you. Whitewashed walls and neighbors' hands. Oh, child of my Aprils, little earth of 6 pounds, my white hair keeps you asleep, lit. While the child sleeps, Sonia undresses. She scrubs me until I spit soapy water. Big, she smiles. A man should smell better than his country, such as the silence of a woman who speaks against silence, knowing that silence is what moves us to speak. She throws my shoes and glasses in the air. I'm of deaf people, and I have no country but a bastard and an infant and a marriage bed. Soaping together, that is sacred to us. Washing each other's shoulders. You can fuck anyone, but with whom can you sit in water? Poem bombardment. Poem bombardment. My body runs in a loam of street, my clothes in a pillowcase. I look for a man who looks exactly like me, to give him my Sonia, my name, my shirt, it has begun. Neighbors climb the trolleys at the fish market, breaking all their moments in half. Trolleys bursts like intestines in the sun. Pavel shots, I am so fucking beautiful, I cannot stand it. Two boys still holding tomato sandwiches, hopping at trolleys light. Soldiers aim at their faces, their ears. I can't find my wife. Where is my pregnant wife? A body, an adult male awaits to explode like a hand grenade. It has begun. I see the blue canary of my country, big breadcrumbs from which citizens' eyes, big breadcrumbs from my neighbor's hair. The snow leaves the earth and falls straight up as it should to have a country so important. To run into walls, into streetlights, into loved ones as one should. The blue canary of my country runs into walls, into streetlights, into loved ones. The blue canary of my country watches their legs as they run and fall. A cigarette. A cigarette. Watch. Washington citizens do not know. They are evidence of happiness. In a time of war, each is a repeat out document of laughter. Watch, God. They have something to tell that not even they can hear. Climb a roof in the central square of this bombed out city. You will see one neighbor gives a cigarette, another gives a dog a pint of sunlit beer. You will find me, God, like a dumb pigeon's beak. I am packing every which way at astonishment. Firing squad. Firing squad. On balconies, sunlight, unpopular sunlight on our lips. Today, no one is shooting. A girl cuts her hair with imaginary scissors. Scissors in sunlight, her hair in sunlight. Another girl nicks a pair of shoes from a sleeping soldier's covered with lights. A soldier's wake and gape at us, gaping at them. What do they see? Tonight, they shot 50 women at Lerner Street. I sit down to write and tell you what I know. A child learns the world by putting it in her mouth. A girl becomes a woman and a woman earth body. They blame you for all things and they seek in the body what does not live in the body. The townspeople watch them take Alfonso. Now, each of us is a witness stand. Vasenka, watches us. Watch for soldiers row Alfonso Brabinski on the sidewalk. We let them take him. All of us cowards. But we don't say. We carry in our suitcases, our coat pockets, our nostrils. Across the street, they wash him with fire hoses. First he screams and he stops so much sunlight a t-shirt falls off a clothesline and the old man stops, picks it up, presses it to his face. Neighbors line up to watch him drown on the sidewalk like a vaudeville actor. In so much sunlight, each of us is a witness stand. They take Alfonso, and no one stands up. Our silence stands up for us. Okay, so I'm going to read one more poem which will bring it all much closer home. And then I will stop and maybe we can have a conversation and see how much time is left, okay? Just so that I'm not talking at you all the time, but we have a little bit of interaction and conversation. So this poem is called In a Time of Peace. In a time of peace, in a time of peace. Inhabitant of Earth, for 40-something years, I once found myself in a peaceful country. I watched the neighbors open their phones to watch a cop demanding a man's driver license. And when a man reaches for his wallet, the cop shoots into the car window. Shoots. It is a peaceful country. We pack our phones and go to the dentist to pick up children from school to buy shampoo and basil hours to the gun. Boy shot by police, lies on the pavement, but we see in his open mouth the nakedness of the whole nation. We watch others watch. The body of a boy lies on a pavement exactly like the body of a boy. It is a peaceful country, and it clips our citizens' bodies effortlessly, the way the president's wife trims her toenails. All of us still have to do the hard work of dentist appointments, of remembering to make a summer salad, basil, tomatoes. It is enjoy tomatoes and a little salt. This is a time of peace. I don't hear gunshots, but watch birds splash over the backyards of the suburbs. How bright is the sky! The avenue spins on its axis. How bright is the sky? Forgive me. How bright? Well, I see there is the first question in the Q&A. I'll repeat it for those who might not be able to have access to Q&A. The question is, you repeat phrases and words in your poems. What meaning does that bring out for you? This is a great question because it gives us the opportunity to chat about the writing process, the poetic devices, and so forth. Okay, so what is repetition doing in poetry? Repetition is one of the oldest poetic devices. One of the oldest poetic forms. We have things like line breaks, like metaphors, like similes, alliteration, assonance, and inner rhyme, and so forth. Repetition came much earlier than that. It came to use in literature way before literature ever existed. Once upon a time, we were all of us humans, and somewhere in an African continent, since that's where we all come from. And we were a tribe, and we happened to have a shaman. And we didn't necessarily quite have a language ability very much, but we already had fire. Just barely began to invent it. And so humans made fire, and the shaman saw it, and out of wonder or astonishment or fear, began to chant fire, 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 or till he or she or they just dropped the shaman. That kind of incantation was one of the first devices that showed us that language is not there merely for delivery of information. How you deliver it can be information as well, it can be more than information. Poem is not just about an event, it is an event. So that whole thing about shaman and the tribe, I didn't make it up. It is basic anthropology, Anthropology 101, the history of human condition, how we first began to use language and tools such as fire. You can find it in most introduction to anthropology books. But what it shows us that devices, we don't just use them in poetry to make something pretty. We use them to invoke something or to make a kind of poem that we don't necessarily want to make flat, but we want the readers themselves to gather without us saying it ourselves. I use repetition personally for more than one reason. The basic reason, it provides a certain kind of structure. It provides an incantation. There is also danger of repetition. And what is that? Well, the second time you repeat it, the people already know. It's no longer surprising. It might be powerful then to do, but the third time you say it, it becomes obvious. So you have to vary it. How do you do that? You put things in tension with one another. You repeat something to do something wildly different and then repeat something again, but second time around it has a slightly different meaning or entirely different meaning. So the repetition is not just a way to reinsert something to the reader, but also a way for reader to discover something instead of you telling it to them. So the reader begins to have an experience and they are living with the text. I hope that makes sense. If not, please ask a follow-up question and I'll be happy to keep talking about it. All right. So the next question we have, how do you in poetry help us remain human in time of crisis? That is $1 million question. But it is also a very simple and very real question. Something most of us think about often, even if we don't necessarily think about poetry often. How does being human helps us to survive in a time of crisis? Because poetry is about that. It is setting the human to music, making the human vivid through images, rendering the human in a very, very tight, small amount of text, not a 1,000-page novel or a newspaper with all kinds of information, but a very short text that you can literally put in your pocket and take anywhere. Now, from personal experience, I will tell you something that happens to me is, unfortunately, for the last almost 4 years, about 2 or 3 times a year. So I go to Ukraine. I have family there and friends. I'm from Odessa, Ukraine. And I go there about two or three now times a year. Odessa used to be quote unquote safer place in Ukraine. It used to be a place where a lot of refugees came from other cities that got utterly devastated and bombed out, like Mariupol, for example. What does safe mean in Ukraine? Safe means that you're not bombed every hour, you're bombed a couple of times a week. That's what safe means. These days, Odessa is definitely not safe. It's bombed a whole lot more. What does it mean? That means that if you're there, you go to a bomb shelter. What do people do in bomb shelters? I have never, ever seen anybody read a novel in bomb shelter. I have never seen anybody read a newspaper in bomb shelter. Sometimes people try to check news, but the internet is not reliable. It's way underneath. So what do people do? They stare at walls. They try to have a conversation, but honestly, it's not the best place to have a small talk. I was very curious to see how often people just begin to hum something from the sound, go literally recite a poem to each other. And one person will just say a line, and another person will pick it up and respond to it. So it's a kind of call and response almost. But it also kind of makes sense because it's poetry is a language that you carry with you in your body. It's a moment of awe, a moment of astonishment, translated into language that you carry from one human body to another, that you transport from one human body to another by means of language. You try to make sense of what is happening to you in a moment of crisis. And what do? You have this bit of remembering language that you can repeat like an incantation, actually. That may or may not make sense of the world, because what does? Um, but gives you a kind of balm, or gives your outrage, your fury, a shape. It is no longer chaos, this crisis. It's contained in a line, in a stanza, in a poem. And that is something that in my experience, humans tend to reach to. And even here in the United States, where we sometimes talk like we are at war with each other, but we are not quite. Um, After something terrible happens, people send poems to each other by email. You often see it. You saw it after 9/11. You saw it in so many times. So there is something about poetry, and I wouldn't say that it solves crisis. No, I would never say that. But it solves a certain rupture, a certain tear in a human. And it's not necessarily even solving it. It's like when you're drowning, you see a piece of wood and you grab it. Is that piece of wood a ship? No. But it's a piece of wood that you grab when you're drowning. Um, are we in crisis now? Absolutely, we are in crisis. Can poetry solve that crisis for us? No. Poetry is like Tylenol. It helps with a headache. And what we need is open heart surgery. So we need slightly stronger medicine. That's my take on it, but it's just one person's take.
Yes, actually, I'd like to introduce one of my students, Natalie, who has a question for you, please. Come on up. Thank you so much.
So throughout my readings of like each poems, I often thought of the reviews that were left behind before I even got into reading, and it was really interesting. And I just wanted to say that these poems are a powerful and rich story about censorship and political apathy. But I just wanted to understand, who exactly is the speaker in these poems?
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. But what is the question?
Who is the speaker in the poem in all the poems?
Who's the speaker in the poems? Well, this is a thank you for asking. If you look at the very first page, even before the book begins, you will see a cast of characters. And you will see that there are three speakers in the book. In the part one, the speaker is Alfonso. In the part two, the speaker is Mama Gala. But in both of them, there is also once or twice speaker that is a V of the town itself. And they don't always have an easy relationship because the town begins as a kind of a wonderful protest against the occupation. And it had this larger than life figures, wonderful figures, Alfonso, Mama Gala, Sonia, right, would stand up. But as the violence continues, you see a certain kind of change, both in them and also in the town itself. And the town is sometimes not so wonderful. Is willing to watch and not stand up after a while. But even in a town, you see by the end, there's a certain spark. Even though the soldiers feel they can't take the language away, the children continue the language. So there is uneasy questioning, actually, of who is this we? The book begins with we live it happily during the war. But it ends, the final poem, with an I, a different pronoun, a person really. And both of them say, forgive us and forgive me. But those are not the same thing. And the book is kind of exploring that in a way. So your question is very, very much on target, so to speak. Who is the speaker? Who am I? Who is we? It is both political question, but also a metaphysical question, a philosophical question. Right? I hope that helps to answer it in some way, or at least lead you to answering it yourself. For me, what I was hoping to do is, and that has to do not just with I and we in the poems, but also with sign language, because people protest by inventing a language, right? And the reader is seeing little signs and then subtitles underneath, right? And then as the book proceeds, some of the signs are repeated, so hopefully you're remembering them. Yeah. And then by the end of the book, the signs, a little message, but no subtitles are done. Because if you read through the book, you now know what the signs mean. You have seen them already. And so to speak, you become a member of that town. But remember, the town is sometimes wonderful, sometimes not. So the question for you is, where are you now there? So who the speaker is perhaps also the question for you, not just for me. That's the hope I'm having as a writer, that the reader will ask precisely this kind of question. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very insightful.
Do we have another? We have another student coming up.
Hi. Okay. So I'm Sam. I was struck by how the story of this small town feels both intimate and universal. Even though it's set in an unnamed place, the imagery and emotions mirror many real world situations, you can say. So my question is, what do you think makes your depiction of resistance feel so timeless and universally relevant?
Well, that's not a question for me. Use the question again for the reader why it touches them. But I can tell you the perspective or lack of one from which I was writing these poems. And the book took a long time to write precisely for that reason. I happened to come from Ukraine. My family came from Ukraine in 1993, very soon after Soviet Union collapsed. So I had a very happy and loving family. The country around us was not very happy and loving, and essentially collapsed, and we left or had to do. So that was pretty much where the background where I come from. Now, I do go back to Ukraine periodically, as I mentioned. The book began around here in California, around the time I moved to San Diego, California. My first book, Dancing in Odessa, was published in 2004. So that's when I began to think about the next book, right? and I moved to San Diego in 2006. The book was published in 2018. So that gives you a little bit of framework and time. Now, my first book is very much a kind of a refugee or immigrant mythology. Um, it has to do with this Europe where I come from, the struggle there with writers or artists who come from that place. My father passed away soon after we came to America. And of course, I wanted to have a conversation with him despite that. And so many poems were in conversation with what he taught me. But in 2004, I published that book. It's called Dancing in Odessa. And after I did, I had to ask myself, okay, so that was my conversation with my birthplace, where I come from. I come to America in 93, 2004. I've been here for 11 years. By that time, I was already married with the love of my life, who's my wife, and who's American from New Hampshire. Who am I? What am I doing? Am I going to play around and run around pretending to be Eastern European, even though I live in America for 11 years now? Like any refugee or immigrant, I was literally one foot in one place and another foot in another place. It's a very common experience, right? These days. So moving to San Diego in 2006, I was struck by a very strange thing. What do you do here, right, and moving to a new place? You need a bookshelf. So you go to Home Depot to buy nails and a hammer, and outside of Home Depot, there's a dude offering you to build that bookshelf and to carry it to your home, which is a normal thing. What is not normal is by you having a conversation and ice car stuff and drag this person into an ice car. It's 2004. 6, I'm sorry, 2006. And you're standing there watching what just happened. You never were in a border town. Now the whole country is a border town. Moreover, this person has 2 children whom she just bought ice cream for. And so they are watching this happen. And for you, having come from the fall of USSR, from a kind of violent time, there was a war next door in Moldova, only 2 hours from where you come from. Using those kind of images makes you wonder how do I respond? What do I write as a writer? How do I respond to the utterly similar images that happen in the world's richest country and the country that's literally at war now for a long time and that's had a bunch of revolutions before? How come that there are such similar situations? And so I realized it very quickly that I wouldn't be honest for me to just pretend to be an American or pretend to be an Ukrainian Jew. I'm both. So I needed to find a perspective that would speak to both of those experiences. And I asked it, okay, what form, what genre will speak to them? And I realized that fable or fabulism, by fable. Because, when you grow up, you might read the fables from your country, but you read fairy tales from many other countries too. And for you as a child, it's totally your native language. It doesn't matter what country. It's a language of a dream. Fable, fairy tale is a language of a dream. And we all have dreams. And so I realized that was a genre I needed to write for, or in, but it wasn't necessarily out of a literary ambition. It was out of a real dilemma. How do I stay honest, having these 2 kinds of experience? And how do I write a poem that can speak honestly to both of them? without choosing one over the other. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
All right, so I have a couple questions. I brought the book here with me. So firstly, the townspeople watched them take Alfonso. I wanted to highlight the line, Vasenka watches us watch 4 soldiers throw Alfonso Barabinsky on the sidewalk. We let them take him, all of us, cowards. I just wanted to highlight that because I think that, is something we can relate to in current times. But the question I had for you was, what we don't say we carry in our suitcases, coat pockets, our nostrils. What was that alluding to?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Complacency. Guilt, and knowing that even if we don't respond, we're there, and non-response is a response, and not the kind we want to be coming from ourselves. Even if you are silent, sometimes silence can be a protest. Other times silence is you being silenced. And the book is really trying to show both. In the beginning of the book, you have silence as a refusal, silence as a protest. Silence is a wonderful thing. But by the time you get to that poem that you're quoting, silence means a very different kind of thing. And yet some of them might still be refusing with silence. So this is the kind of silence is a curious thing. There can be silence as a refusal, just I don't want to engage with someone, or silence is violence being done to someone. But it can also be a lovers in which the book also tries to explore, says the silence between 2 lovers. When you're making up a language of the lovers, one says, another says, another says, and suddenly you're having this conversation without having to say a word. And then there is the silence of spiritual life, when you long for a certain kind of silence, but not because it's absence. Quiet and the opposite, it's fullness, it's full of awe and wonder. And then there is a philosophical idea with great philosophers, great poets tell us silence of God is God, which is an interesting statement to make, right? But then you realize, wait a second, so I'm hard of hearing. And there are about 10% of people in the world who are either deaf or hard of hearing. What does it mean to say that God equals silence if it doesn't apply to 10% of people? You know what I'm saying? So that's in the notes you can see little lines, and silence is a creation of the hearing. Deaf actually don't believe in it. So the book is playing with this kind of questioning, and you have beautifully captured one of those dilemmas. On the one side, we know we are quiet and we're carrying it with us. On the other side, it can also stand up for us. So it's both a good, but a possibility of still standing up.
Okay. The other question was relating to Firing Squad on page 65. This one, the question is the line, a girl cuts her hair with imaginary scissors. The scissors in sunlight, her hair in sunlight. And I was wondering, I feel like that's some kind of symbolism possibly. And like, what's the meaning behind that line?
This one was actually pretty realistic kind of image. It happens a lot when you live in a kind of a neighborhood where there's not a lot of money. the kid may have only one or two toys, but they still want to play. So they are, playing with their hand. They pretend they're giving some sense of haircut and so forth. The poem itself, for me, it was a hard poem to write. It's a horrifying poem. It's about a mass murder. But was a poem was trying to point, or so to speak, it was trying to make, a lot of mass murder begins on a beautiful day. When people are out and kids are playing, and then, oops. But then as I was writing it, I realized that wasn't the end. There was something else that I was trying to get to, and that's where the final line or two come from. They seek in the body what doesn't live in the body. Like, why do people kill each other? What it is that they're seeking? What it is that they're trying to find or understand? And that is that was a third that came to the poem later that I didn't set out to write, but that ended was probably more mysterious for me in a way. But what you're for, honestly, there wasn't any symbolism in that part. It was just trying to depict a lively day in a regular neighborhood.
Okay, and the last question. This might be like a possible trigger warning. So a child learns the world by putting it in her mouth, that line, and the body, they blame you for all things, and they seek in the body what does not live in the body. So what's the reference in the first line, and what is it that they're seeking in the body that they can't find in the body?
Wonderful question. I kind of already answered the final line when I was talking a little earlier. The first one is also pretty naturalistic when you see a tiny baby crawling around. They're always trying to put something in their mouth, They're trying to, a plum, they're trying to share leg, The little, they don't have a language yet. They learn the language by touch, by smell. All the sounds are new. And that was really when the poem was changing for me, like the mystery of what it is that we are seeking in that body. We grow up as a kid just trying to touch the world, and then we become adults and we start killing each other. What it is we are trying to do? Why are we here?
That is a good question. All right. Thank you so much, Ilya.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We do have a few more questions, and I'll just take that from the chat. From Shay, why title the book of all the possible titles, Deaf Republic?
Of all the possible titles, why the Deaf Republic? Well, the simplest one would be why not? But I did want to play a little bit for the question, or investigate, so to speak. Strange word, investigate. What does it mean to claim a certain kind of community, or to name a certain kind of community? Being hard of hearing myself, I have taken quite a few classes in disability studies. And the third thing that you hear is, don't make a metaphor out of disability. Which is a valid point, and I'm all for it. But then the second question comes, well, if you don't have a disability, you can make a metaphor out of yourself. But you're telling me not to make a metaphor out of myself. You see a little. So I thought, well, why do we say that don't make a metaphor? It's because you're making a negative metaphor. well, what if you make a positive one? What if everybody should be like the death? What if Daphne should be a positive protest or a positive community building that we all aspire to? And that's where the book begins, really. The people protest with it. They find themselves not as a nation or a language or a religion, but a kind of communal gathering to honor that boy. And that I found appealing, but then I realized that, oh no, I'm just going to keep writing propaganda here. Everybody should be like me. No, no, no. So I realized that I need to honor the deaf by showing that they're human, just like one of us. And that's for more complex characters. Like I love Alfonso, Sonia, and Mama Gala. They're great characters, but they're also very complicated and not necessarily nice lives. And by nice lives, I don't just mean that they got murdered. I mean that Alfonso murdered other people. So did Mama Gala. So human lives change. They do have certain crises, and how do we approach them? So I wanted them to be complex characters, not just cartoons.
Does it answer? Yes. Thank you so much. It does answer the question. Do we have time for another question before we hear a few more poems? I saw one was what are you working on now? That was one from Kathleen. While I get the next.
Oh, hello,
question.
Kathleen Pierce, who have put a question in Q&A, is a really brilliant poet. And you should all go online and look up her work and hopefully get a book. She is a brilliant poet of mystery. Right now we talk so much about what can poetry do in crisis. But for me, at least personally in a crisis time, I find poems that have nothing to do with crisis most helpful. A poem that can give me stillness, a poem that can give me the value of certain solitude that the world imposes on me by virtue of what world is becoming. So I, from myself, find more inspiration from the place if I can change that place. Oh, you think it is negative? Well, let me show you. It can actually be a source of delight. And I think there is a wonderful quote from Marianne Moore, which I think sometimes when I read Kathleen's book, and that is says the best cure for loneliness is solitude. That's from Marianne Moore. And I don't mean necessarily loneliness or solitude. I often mean wonder how deep can we go in wonder. So that for me is interesting. Anyway, hello, Kathleen. Thank you for the question. I think what I might do, just to bring attention to it, is read a translation from a poet my wife and I translated from Ukraine. It's a very young poet, might be of the same age as one of the people in the room right now. So it might be appealing. A little trigger warning. It's a tough poem, but it's also a very beautiful one. Let me see if I can share a screen for you guys. Yeah, the poet's name is Levinson. Lisi comes from the town of Bucha, which is a small town outside of Kyiv. And in 2022, when the big wars, the larger invasion began, he had to escape under bombardments and typical situation. Now he's in the army. I'll read the first poem from his book called In the Hospital Rooms of My Country. Lisuk Panasuk, translated by Katie Ferris, in the hospital rooms of my country. Letters of the alphabet go to war, clinging to one another, standing up, forming words no one wants to shut, sentences that are blown by minds into enemies, stories sheltered by multiple rocket launches. The Ukrainian world is ambushed through the broken window of the letter D. Other countries watch how the letter I loses its head, as the roof of the letter M falls through. The language in a time of fall can't be understood. Inside the sentence, the whole, no one wants to die, no one speaks, but the hospital bed of the letter E lies a pretense it is too shy to use. You can see the light is a clumsily sewn up holes of the letter F, the sound had its tongue torn out due to the disagreement regarding the etymology of torture. Yeah, here it is. The etymology of torture. There is too much alphabet in the hospital rooms of my country. Too much alphabet. No place to stick an apostrophe. When falls off the voice, covering us with words incomprehensible, like men who, in the wartime, refuse to speak. Let me see if I can find here. One morning, I woke up at the bow and flew headlong. What do you want me? Now this is happening. Icon. The whole earth is an icon. Madonna is a child. My father is child. It's my mother. Then it was me. It is the whole nurtures. They pray to this image. Surprises no one. Evokes no sympathy. It is a traditional family. Little palm. Pretend you are a potato and hide in a sack. Pick at the earth through a hole while they are carrying you from the garden to the cellar. In the end, hop out of the sack, but no one is looking. A very small boy. Mother keeps your baby hair like a martin of time. You shake them, imagine you before and after. Childhood is fallen in the snow. Wood is fallen, snow, wood, house, fallen in the snow, fallen in the snow, fallen in the snow, fallen in the snow. When does childhood begin? And when does it end? So small, this, wow. Okay, let me stop. And so right now I am working to answer the question, a new book of poems and also prose. But I wanted to read these translations because They are from the book, which will be out in January from Starabandi Books. And to give a voice to this poet whose home was mutilated just a couple of years ago and who's fighting for his country right now. All of the poems I have read for you are new poems that were written during this invasion. Which is, for me, striking. Yes, the first poem was a devastating poem about violence, right? And violence not just done to human bodies, but to their minds, to their very speech. But also at the same time, he's going back to the very, very early childhood and tries to find the mysteries, the wonders there. When everything you have is gone, what do you have left? And you realize, oh, you have so much left. You have so much human spirit left. And I think this is kind of instructive for our movement. And that might help us not to sentimentalize. And let's go back for a moment to the conversation about craft. So we talked about repetition. Let's talk about emotion for a moment. How do you bring emotion into the poem? What tools of craft do you use? I just say the word sentimental. So think for a moment. It's not a quiz, so I'm not going to request a response, but I'm going to ask a question, and then I'll give you a moment of quiet to think about it, perhaps to answer for yourself. So here is the question. What is the difference between feeling, emotion, and sentimentality? Okay, I'll answer that, but I'll be quiet for a moment and hope that you might consider answering it yourself. Okay, so what is the difference? I would give you a couple of answers. First, in terms of perspective, and then in terms of craft. Perspective is also a tool of craft for a writer, by the way. So, what is sentimental and what is emotional in a work of literature? Sentimental is when a writer is crying in front of the reader. Oh, my life is terrible. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody's life is terrible. Bye. Emotional is when a reader is crying in front of the writer because they're moved by the work of literature. What you have read, call it emotions in you. So you're moved to it. The question is how? How do you create that kind of emotion in the reader? By what tools of craft? Well, let me not reinvent the bicycle. Let me go to one of the most famous examples in poetry. One of the most famous poems we have in the 20th century. It's a villanelle by Dylan Thomas called "Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night." And that's the very first line of the poem. Let's think about it. What is he really saying? It's an elegy for his father, and father is dying, and the son is crying out. Do not go gentle into that good night. Well, if you think about it, what he's saying is somewhat sentimental. If you say, Dad, you don't die. My life is terrible. Don't die. So how does he make an art out of it? How does he make you feel the emotion? In Dylan Thomas's case, he has an amazing ear genius. So he's using assonance alliteration in the whole form of a poem, villanelle repetitions, to hide the sentiment, to render the sentiment in the music. And therefore, as you perceive the poem, you perceive it with your ear, even before it gets to your brain. Do not go gentle into that good night. Think about all those G cells, those ants, how much work they do. You may not even know English, but you will already be appreciating that music. Think for a moment about going to a performance. Let's say you're going and there is beautiful music and a great singer singing, and you understand every word and you're so moved you can. And then go next day. There's no singer, there's just beautiful music. And you're so moved you can. And so no words, you don't know why. And yet the music makes you feel. And that's exactly what Dylan Thomas is using that assonance or alliteration for. That tools of craft are helping the writer to create content in the reader's head even before the information is processed. As I said before, a poem is not about an event. It is an event. I'm sorry, that was a very long response. Any other questions?
Thank you. That was actually very helpful. I was thinking even, especially some of our English 101 students are here today, and thank you for bringing them along, talking about the necessity of writing and reading and just the music of writing as well. There was another question. Armani wanted to know why you chose in Deaf Republic, the book is written as a kind of play, but it's in poetry. And he asked why poetry as opposed to, say, a play or a novel. I wonder if you would just take a moment to answer his question, please.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for asking this question. I actually don't necessarily know if it is written as poetry or as a play. I think of it as quote-unquote hybrid genre. The real question I think you're asking is why write in a hybrid genre? Why don't we all only write sonnets? Why don't we all only write rhymed poems? Why it is that we need to invent new forms? What is this impulse that we have to create something, to collage different forms, to bring them together, or to take it apart? What it is, are we just playing and showing off? Oh, hey, I'm so smart, I can do that. But really, would I spend 15 years of my life to just show off? And why am I doing that? I think in some ways, for me, and I don't know if it succeeds, that's a whole other question, whether it succeeds. But what one attempts to do is to ask, well, why can't I write it just as sonnets? Why can't this whole book just be a ballad? Why do I need to have it as a book in voices, with prose and with lyrics? And some has sound patterns, most have images. There's a whole lot of metaphor and simile, but probably the most striking line in the book is direct line with no figurative language. Why am I making those choices? And the answer for this particular question of genre, why a hybrid form that combines play and poetry, has to do with something I mentioned it a little earlier. When you come from one background, one culture, and you live in another, my native language is Russian, but Russian was not the language my parents spoke. So growing up, I heard Yiddish. So going to school, I heard Ukrainian because I lived in Ukraine. My native language, the hard of hearing person from early childhood, is probably none of those. It is the language of lip reading. And the language of lip reading is really quite different. from many of them, because when I'm reading your lips right now, you are literally holding a laptop and there are two speakers in front of you. And once in a while, somebody comes in and does something on your laptop and then quickly run. And all of that is a part of your sentence when I'm watching your lips when you're asking your question. If you had this conversation on the street, the probably likelihood that there might, if you're lucky, there would be a cat walking by with a tail like this. And they would try to brush by our feet. And somebody might be wanting to stop a cab nearby and then decides that the cab is too expensive, slap the door and decides to walk. Somebody else would be opening a newspaper, see that Trump did another terrible thing, can toss that newspaper away. And that would be all a part of our conversation as a vigilist. So the real question for me is what form gives that experience? Why is my book so full of images, for example? Well, exactly why. That was my native language. I was living in an animal. There are some sounds, but the English is not my native language. So I literally had to write my own lullaby because I never heard a lullaby in English. My first love poems to another human were not in English. So I decided, why not write some? But then it was just like a shopping bag with all of those different forms. What gives it a form? Well, if I put it all on a sonnet, which I love, my wife writes a sonnet a day probably, it would not give a shape to the actual experience I live with. I need a hybrid form because I need a shape that feels honest to the experience I'm trying to convey. I'm definitely not a confessional poet. But there are some elements from my life. I saw another question in Q&A, but then it disappeared, which was about who are these people, who are these characters. They are sometimes more than one person. Some of those stories are very true. My father was a stolen baby. If you read the book to the end of the book, part 2, the baby got stolen. He was in fact stolen in 1937 because his father, my grandfather, were named after his Polish father, was declared an enemy of the people and tried during Stalin's time. And my Polish grandmother was sent in Siberia for a decade. And so he had a whole other pair of parents. And then the World War II came and he was a Jewish child in Odessa, which was occupied. How did he survive? Well, the woman who saved him, she shaved him every day so the people wouldn't see that he has dark curly hair. Because that would immediately put him in a camp if he would be lucky enough to even go anywhere. So some of the stories are true, but it's definitely not a documentary book. I don't have a documentary imagination. Other people do. Two poems at the beginning and the ending of a book are leaning more in that direction. But I wanted the reader to have that dream of Death Republic and then wake up by then to realize, oh, maybe I wasn't dreaming. And so some of the language in the final poem and in the rest of the book is actually similar. The nakedness of the whole country, for example, is a line that gets repeated in words. So this hybrid kind of thing has a reason behind it, which is how do you give shape to a person who doesn't have just one story but two stories, and how you try to do it while honoring both, or trying to speak to both. Because if you just do one, you kind of starting to perform that performative identity, so to speak. And why spend 10 years of your life trying to be a person you're not? Why not try instead to discover a person you are? You may not have a correct answer, but at least you tried. And by the end of the day, it's all a mystery, And the form that you are trying to create by cluttering different forms is really to give space to that mystery. Yeah, of course, you want to create a world, you want to populate it with humans or human emotions or human images, but you also want to leave a little room where there are no direct answers.
I think that really answers the question, does it? And such a beautiful, generous answer, especially considering as I look around the faces in the room, many multilingual students in the room. And so you speak to the heart of that. And I know on behalf of all the people here and on behalf of the Kupferberg Holocaust Center and my colleagues, we are so grateful for this conversation with you today. Thank you for your generosity and thank you for speaking with us and sharing your poems. We look forward to your new book coming out. You said January?
Yeah, it's a book by a poet, Ilya Kaminsky, that Katie Ferris and I translated. It's called In the Hospital Rooms of My Country, and it's coming from Sarabandi Books.
Thank you so much. And for those of you here now and online, we do have an event happening at the KHC tomorrow, Beyond All Binaries. We hope you will join us. It's at 12:30 in person and online. And next week, Michael Shara will be here to discuss Einstein, and that is part of our fellowship conversation. So he will be here in person and always online. Thank you all so much, and thank you again, Ilya Kaminsky, for being with us today. We are clapping for you. Thank you. Thank you so much.